We're very pleased to have two academic leaders today, Melanie Knowles from Kent State University and Gilbert Michaud from Ohio University. And I want to say at the outset that both institutions are strong partners with Green Energy Ohio. Kent State has been an important part of our Green Energy Ohio tour for many years, and Ohio University has hosted events, and actually we have a board member from Ohio University on the Green Energy Board, Green Energy Ohio Board. So thank you. Again, their bios are online, so I'm not going to go through them this morning, or I guess it's afternoon. I will say that for today's conversation, I'd like to ask that everyone, if you have a question, that you type it in the chat function rather than raising your hand. We really haven't had many people raise their hand and offer to be on screen. So for simplicity's sake, we are going to ask people to put questions in the chat bar, and we will be monitoring those. And I would also like to encourage you to do it whenever you feel like doing it, even though we'll take questions later in the conversation. We want to be ready for that. So if you have questions, feel free to start typing them in. With that, I'm going to start with a couple of broad questions for both of our guests today. Colleges and universities are among the most impacted institutions when it comes to the pandemic. And there are now many questions, many discussions, and some people would say much controversy about what will happen this fall. What direction should institutions of higher learning as well as other schools, what direction should we go in? So I'd like to start by asking each of you what you see for your campuses, and then also how it affects your particular work. Melanie in the sustainability area, Gilbert in the research and teaching and part of the Voinovich School for leadership. So if you could just sort of start with that, and whoever wants to go ahead can do so.
I don't know. I'm happy to go first. So, hi everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces. And I guess before answering the question, I just thank Jane and the GEO team for inviting us. This has been really fun. I've been tuning into all of the other sessions, and I think it's really important and good for us to keep hanging out and having conversations with one another. Probably more important now, more now than ever. In terms of the question, our campus at OU, we're planning on opening up at this point, subject to change. There's a lot of moving parts, but as we sit here on July 23rd, we are planning on opening with a lot of sort of caveats, and it's going to be a different vibe, a different feel. You do have to wear a mask. We are trying to figure out how can we distance our students in the classroom. We were chatting before we went live about the potential for setting up tents on campus and doing some sort of outdoor courses where possible. I think at the Voinovich School, however, we're kind of a unique college on campus where we're sort of the public service school where we are doing applied and engaged research, and our faculty members, myself included, have relatively light teaching loads. Maybe we're teaching one class a semester. And thus we have this inherent expectation that we are serving on committees and interacting with stakeholders and doing, research reports for utilities or nonprofits or other clients that we work with. And so a lot of that stuff has been largely business as usual, I'd say. I'm doing a lot of, reports for the Power Siting Board for developers that are trying to, do solar farms in Ohio, working with other sort of partners in Columbus around, clean energy and solar deployment type issues. And it seems like despite the health pandemic, a lot of those activities, which is a good thing, I'd argue, are still happening. And I think, from a research, we're crunching numbers, we're writing reports, a lot of that can be done remotely. And we've been, cruising right through the summer, pretty normal. It'll be interesting. School starts in about a month here to have the students back around and how that will look like. But I'm optimistic. I hope it's a good experience, and we'll be okay.
Because Athens has been a real hotspot. I mean, Athens was at one point on the verge of moving into a level 4, which I think would be the only level 4 in the state. I haven't seen recent numbers on that, but yeah, it's been it has been one of my favorite microbreweries. Little Fish shut down voluntarily again. So just, you know, for what it's worth, there's been a lot of going on down there. Melanie, how about you?
So a lot of the same for Kent State. Our students are coming back in the fall. Enrollment is down a little bit, not as bad as I think some schools are experiencing, but it'll still look sparser because as with other schools, a lot of classes will be remote. And so you won't necessarily see the volume of students on campus that you did in the past. The university architect is working to see how many students can fit into each space, and the capacity is normally about 20 or 25% what it would have been pre-COVID. We're using other spaces around campus that can fit a class, like the ballroom at the Kent State Hotel, I think is going to be used for classes. So finding whatever ways we can to accommodate the students safely. We have what we call the Flashes Safe 7, which includes things like wearing a mask, social distancing, monitoring your health, ask questions if you have questions, all of those things. A lot of our big projects that were supposed to start in the summer are currently on hold, but projects that were already begun are continuing. And so a couple of the exciting ones sustainability-wise is we have a building that is being renovated. It will be the new Design Innovation Hub. It includes a dining facility, and we've been looking for a while at how to address our food waste on campus. This facility will have the Grind to Energy program with a tank to take food waste that will then go to Quasar for anaerobic digestion. So that is still something that's going to be up and running when that facility opens just before classes start. Also, we have regional campuses that will be getting solar PV. The installation starts in August, and we expect to see production in December. Actually, you'll hear from him later, but Bob Misbrunner is the project manager for that project and also for a lot of the energy efficiency projects on campus. And I asked him to be here in case people have technical questions about some of that stuff. He's the best person to address those things. As far as me, a lot of my work does continue to be the same, even though I'm working remotely. Some things have gone to the back burner because it's like all hands on deck to make sure that students can come back safely. And I've been asked in some cases to do research about various aspects of COVID, how we can best respond to those things on campus. Things like paper towels versus hand dryers in the restroom. So kind of random, but you know, anywhere that I can be helpful, I want to step up and do that.
That's great. I know Quasar was on the Green Energy Ohio tour last fall, the Quasar facility, and they take food waste and they do a great job. So it's great to know that you're partnering with them as well. I want to pivot a little bit. We've come to expect the academic community to be on the cutting edge of problem solving when it comes to all of the important issues of the day, really. We look to higher education not only to educate our next generation of problem solvers, but also to do the kind of work that produces some results today. So with regard to clean energy and sustainability, how have your institutions responded to energy and climate concerns? And I know this is important to faculty, it's important to staff. This is an issue that I know a lot of people care about and ask about. So if you could each talk a little bit about that, and Gilbert, if you want to start again.
Sure, yeah, it's a good question, it's interesting. As a professor, as a faculty member, I have a little different angle on this kind of question or this topic. We do have an Office of Sustainability, which is sort of akin to Melanie's department and operations at Kent State, and they are doing a lot of great stuff, projects initiative. They just started, I think within the last year, these sustainability hubs focused around infrastructure and living and administration, and they have sort of different faculty members and student teams, if you will, that are trying to better operationalize these topics and have meetings and do innovative ideas around, you know, sustainability on campus, whether it's LED lighting or things with regard to recycling, in the dining halls and things in the dorms and things of that nature. Personally, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing as a professor is not so much on the applied on campus, what sort of programs are we implementing kind of angle, but more on the research side. And so, a lot of my research focuses on economic development, workforce implications, policy mechanisms as it relates to clean energy deployment. And, as someone who studies and teaches public policy, I share this when I teach my students, there's all of these different phases of policy making and what we're doing in the state with regard to programs and policy deployment and such. And we sort of have, okay, we've identified a problem. We need to come up with potential policy mechanisms or solutions to address that problem. We implement something and then we evaluate it, right? And I think the university has a really important role, and perhaps I'm biased, but as a faculty member, we have a really important role to do things with big data and help with very technical stuff, with writing reports and doing webinars and helping inform the stakeholders that we work with and our partners and funders. We're not policy advocates per se. We're not going to Columbus and doing that kind of thing, but we do have an important role in this larger sort of process to be objective, independent arbiters, and to use the techniques and data that we have to inform stakeholders about how to do certain things, or what policies we ought to be implementing in the state. And so, again, my sort of applied work is more on that technical research side, more so than what we're doing on campus. But we're doing a lot of really cool stuff on campus too.
And of course, you have an engineering school.
Yeah.
And the Russ Engineering College, and I know there's good work being done there as well. Do some of your projects, your research projects, I know you mentioned at state level, do you do anything at the federal level?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally anyway, like, local, regional, state, federal, a lot of my work really does focus on policy mechanisms and ways that we can deploy more solar, whether it's small scale distributed, rooftop solar on homes or small businesses. Been doing a lot of stuff with developers and utilities in the past year or two about utility scale solar farms, trying to understand the unique role of states in implementing their policies versus the role of carbon initiatives or other types of action plans or policy mechanisms for renewables at the federal level. So yeah, it sort of spans the whole gamut of government.
If only they would listen, right? If only policymakers would listen to us.
Exactly.
Melanie, how about you?
Right, so we are the ones working on what we're actually doing on campus, and I'm glad that you folks are out there working on the big policy issues. And of course, Kent State does also have people doing research, especially around fuel cells, which is a great contribution. But so almost all of our buildings have had energy efficiency retrofits, so that we've seen an energy use decrease at the Kent campus of about 24%, and at our regional campuses of about 22%. The power plant that we have on campus is a combined heat and power plant, so it's about twice as efficient as energy that you would get from the grid. And then we're also always looking for renewable energy opportunities. We do currently have a 0.5 megawatt solar array at our field house, and then those 7 regional campuses that will be getting solar this fall. The other thing, from a climate action plan standpoint, I'm actually on a committee for the City of Kent Climate Action Plan, so we're trying to coordinate our efforts around that with the City of Kent, and not just standing alone as the university.
It's interesting because we already had a question that asked about, and I don't want to get into the questions yet, but we already had a question that asked about collaboration with the community. And I know from our clean energy tour that Kent State and the university is very connected to the activities that are taking place in the community.
Yeah, we're really fortunate. We're connecting with them in a number of ways, especially around sustainability.
Yeah. So Gilbert, I want to focus a little bit on, I did some Googling of your research and you mentioned it just now, actually, the deployment of solar energy through community aggregation, including the enactment of a carbon fee in Athens. And of course, carbon fees, carbon taxes are what many people see as the answer to this issue. You know, we made cigarettes so expensive in order to reduce smoking. And the same principle would apply in terms of making carbon generating facilities their output more expensive in order to reduce their use. So first of all, how does community aggregation compare to other solar options, like solar co-ops, for instance? And we had Tristan Rader on last time from Solar United Neighbors. And then talk about the prospect to have more carbon fees. I mean, the fee, as I understand it, is used to pay for solar installations on municipal buildings. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct, yeah. It's a really interesting model. And again, as someone who's a researcher and an economist by trade, this is sort of how do we use policy, whether it's taxing or subsidizing something, to incite behavioral changes, right? And I think
right.
The carbon fee model is really interesting. It's, you know, it's led by SOPEC and other community partners, and you know, we can talk more about this collaborative governance and planning kind of piece. But I'm involved on a lot of these committees, you know, as a faculty member at the university, because of my technical expertise and you know, helping run through models or develop sort of program design, et cetera. And the carbon fee, you know, I've written an academic paper about it and presented at a couple, you know, research conferences. It's really interesting. It's really novel. It's a really interesting thing that is happening in Southeast Ohio, which is sort of a historically, you know, coal country, you know, Appalachian region, and you know, maybe has this little progressive bubble around the university in Athens City specifically. But basically, how it works is recognizing the fact that we are emitting harmful carbon into the atmosphere. Let's pay a fee to partially mitigate that, right? And it's not a full carbon fee, but it's sort of getting at that to some extent. And when they were rolling out their sort of public campaign around this, Rural Action and SOPEC and other partners in the community, their sort of narrative was, it's about the price of a cup of coffee per month, right? Would you be willing to pay an extra $1.50 a month to help raise funds to deploy local renewables? Basically, CCAs, community choice aggregation entities, are allowed in Ohio because we're a deregulated state, and that's a unique attribute of Ohio. And SOPEC is a CCA basically in Athens region, and they are allowed to sort of, they're like sort of an electricity buyers club, I would say, is how I would phrase that, which is, you know, we can be very respondent to our sort of customers and our member demand. And folks in Athens have very pointedly said, we want renewables. And there was no really way to meet that appetite previously, other than buying, you know, renewable energy credits from wind farms in Iowa or Texas or doing something like that. And so this carbon fee sort of kills two birds with one stone, if I may, which is sort of, we know that we're, you know, we're polluting the atmosphere with carbon. Let's partially offset that, and let's do that specifically by deploying local solar on, you know, city hall, on parking garages around the city, like those types of entities, like you said, Jane. And so it's a really unique model. It's a 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour charge, and they ran it through a ballot initiative to be very democratic because they wanted to do that. And it passed with 76% of the folks voting yes, so it was like very widely accepted. I am, just to touch on the second part real quick, I am involved with Solar United Neighbors, and I serve on 2 of their advisory boards, both here in Ohio and also in Virginia, and really well connected with that organization. Their model is more about bulk purchasing and forming these cooperatives for folks that are highly motivated to go solar, usually like residential rooftop PV. And I don't know, I think they're different but equal. They each have their own unique place, and I think they're very important. We're hitting sort of the residential market with the solar co-op programs, and you sort of have your, you know, folks that are self-selecting into that program, and they're very motivated to find an installer and drive down their costs. And then the CCA, you know, solar angle in Ohio is a unique sort of quasi-governmental, you know, a little larger scale. How can we have unique deployment? So. And
those, the aggregation is an opt-out situation, as I understand it. So you're in unless you say, I don't want to be in. So yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it, to make the distinction, because the more opportunities we have to increase the use of renewables, the better. So if there's a co-op in one town and another community does aggregation, that's great because we need these opportunities, we need these options, I think. So yeah, that, you know, I don't know if we'll ever get to a national carbon tax. The state of Washington couldn't even pass one, which one might consider unusual given its likelihood of being on the side of climate control. But anyway, thank you. Melanie, I'm going to move to Melanie. And in 2019, Kent State won the Green Energy Ohio Achievement Award for academia, the Green Achievement Award. And we actually had our event there. I think maybe at the building behind you, in the image behind you.
Yes, it is.
It's the Elliott Center for Architecture and Environmental Design. It's a gorgeous facility and just, you know, perfect for our event, but also so environmentally conscious. You also won the Environmental Protection Agency's, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency's Encouraging Environmental Excellence Award, E3. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects that brought you to be an award-winning campus for these kinds of things.
You know, there are really so many initiatives all over campus, and I always hesitate a little. As a sustainability office, we work with a lot of folks, and I don't want to take credit for all of their work. So a lot of the work that we're talking about here is coming from many partners around campus. But I'll start with green building. Since the university made a commitment to LEED certified building, we now have 14 LEED certified buildings at our campuses. And the one behind me that you were talking about is a LEED Platinum building. I mentioned some of our energy efficiency achievements and our efforts towards renewable energy already. With regard to waste diversion, we're always looking at increasing our recycling rate, reducing the waste stream in general. But one of the projects that we have that's maybe a little bit unique is around textiles. So we have a very large move out program called Throw and Go, so that the students can donate clothing and other usable materials at move out, and they go to the Portage County Clothing Center. They're distributed to people in need in Portage County free of charge. So in move out of 2019, students at Kent State donated, 31.8 tons through our Throw and Grow program. We also have a number of different programs where we collect clothing, whether winter coats. We do a bra drive during October, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we also always have drives for the career closet, so professional clothing for students who need to get ready for internships and interviews and things like that. And then we have a fabric scrap recycling in partnership with the fashion school. So in fiscal year 2019, they recycled over 1,400 pounds of fabric scrap out of that program. So we're really happy with what we've been able to accomplish around textiles, which is something that normally ends up in the landfill, even though a lot of it is reusable or recyclable. We've also tried over the years to do a lot of things around stormwater. So we have two buildings that have green roofs on campus. One again is the Platinum building behind me, and then also Taylor Hall has a green roof. We have examples of permeable pavers, of rain gardens. We have engineered wetlands on campus that collect most of the rainwater that falls on campus, and we also have constructed wetlands for research. So we have a wetland research area. And a really neat project, if anybody is familiar with the Kent campus, sort of along the southern edge of campus is Summit Street. And over the last few years, Summit Street went through a series of improvements. It was designed with a complete streets philosophy, so that it's not just accommodating the vehicles, but also pedestrians and cyclists and anybody who is using that space. But one of the things that happened as a result of that is that the way the stormwater flowed on that part of campus changed. So we have these new campus center ponds that take the stormwater from that part of campus. And we were able to, from the beginning of that project, include faculty whose research is something related to stormwater. So they helped with that design. We kind of joked, the original engineers had these just one rectangular pond on one side of the road, and a little triangular pond on the other side. And so we worked with the faculty to design something that was really exemplary, and also incorporated into their research. So Lauren Kinsman Costello actually has water sampling equipment in place, so she can test the stormwater going in and coming out to see how effective those ponds are at actually removing contaminants from the stormwater. Another really neat thing is that Kent State does have an airport as part of our aeronautics program, and they were one of 20 airports nationwide who received money from the FAA for sustainability programs, and that was based on their sustainability master plan that they also won an award for. So that's just a really neat thing that's kind of unique to Kent State.
Right.
And then just a really cool thing about doing this at a university is all of the faculty and the curriculum. And so there are many parts of the university that are incorporating sustainability into the curriculum. We have, well, I think we're on our 3rd year now of having a bachelor's program in environmental studies. We also have a bachelor's program in environmental and conservation biology. There's a sustainability minor. And then that's housed in the College of Aeronautics and Technology, which also has that energy and sustainability lab that I mentioned that is doing all the really neat fuel cell research. The College of Business Administration is incorporating sustainability, but they don't call it that. It's actually called the Responsible Leadership Initiative. And through that program, they're incorporating the UN Sustainable Development Goals through all of their curriculum. And it is through, I think, most of their curriculum at this point, and they continue to move forward on that. There's a center called the Environmental Science and Design Research Initiative that is interdisciplinary and is looking at the relationship between human systems and natural systems and how we can use that to address issues in our world right now. And then, you know, just many other programs that incorporate sustainability. The College of Architecture obviously incorporates green building. I mentioned the fashion school. I think fashion is the industry with the 2nd biggest impact on climate change after the fossil fuel industry. And so they're being very conscious about teaching their students about that and how they can move forward with their careers and address that issue. So it's just really neat to have it incorporated in so many places and have so many different kinds of collaborators around campus.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that was a fascinating list to me. I mean, and I think it's so indicative of why a university campus has so much potential in these areas, because you have faculty who want to do research. You have students who, you know, are in these programs and care about sustainability. So you have curriculum, you have building managers. I mean, basically the bottom line in terms of how much the university has to pay for energy and how you can reduce those costs. So it's really everywhere. And I used to actually be on the advisory council for the Aeronautic and Technical College at one time. And I know that that is a really unique feature of the campus, to have the airport and to have that teaching program as well. So, and the fashion, the textiles, fascinating. Was there less of that move out contribution this year because people sort of got up and left in the middle of the semester?
Yeah, unfortunately, we did not even have it move out because it happened in April. It happened very quickly. And then there was a lot of concern of, can we actually donate these items safely? Everybody's worried about COVID-19. Is that really the thing to do? So unfortunately, this year we didn't have it for the first time in, I think, 15 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But we are in touch with the County Clothing Center. We are already planning donation programs for the fall. So I don't think we'll make up the tonnage, but we will continue to move forward.
That's great. And that again just shows there are so many things that have been impacted by the actions we've had to take as a result of the pandemic. Every now and then I glance over just to see if I can bring in another question. Someone asked where the Quasar facility is. It's the one we toured was in Worcester, but I think do they have more than one?
They do, and I'm not exactly sure which facility our material will be going to. I have to talk to them about that, but I understand there's a facility in Akron, there's one in Worcester, and there's also one in Cleveland. Cleveland. So I wish there were one closer, and I kind of have some ideas about things we could do in the future, hopefully with Quasar or otherwise. But there are a number in the area.
And you mentioned your CHP, your Combined Heat and Power Unit, and Ohio State is trying to get one through the Power Siting Board right now, and there's some controversy about it. And I think it's a really interesting technology. And as you said, it has reduced by, what was the reduction figure you quoted?
It's twice as efficient as energy that we buy from the grid.
Right. Those are things that the university has to consider. Is yours powered by natural gas?
It is.
Yeah, yeah. In any event, you have a mix, and I think that's what everyone is really looking for. Ohio State buys, I don't know, a quarter of the Columbus campus energy from the Blue Creek Wind Farm, and now they're proposing a CHP plant, and so we really have to find a balance here in terms of where power comes from. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Gilbert with another question. I'm looking over here to see. I don't want to, I know we're, so Luke says they have another in Belmont County. And SOPEC, and Luke, by the way, is going to be our guest on the next, Luke Selfridge from SOPEC is going to be a guest of ours on our next conversation. And he says that Quasar has another in Belmont County, and SOPEC has commissioned a study for Southeast Ohio with Quasar. So that's a good thing. Gilbert, where is my question about the closing of fossil fuel plants? That's clearly something that is high on the priority list of people who want to see us address climate change. But when you close a plant, there is significant community disruption. I know I live just down the road sort of from Conesville, and AEP recently closed Conesville, and that's a small community. I don't think it's technically in Appalachia, but it certainly borders on it. Tell us a little bit about your findings of what happens when these plants close.
Sure, yeah, this has been a really super important part of my research for multiple years now. And I mean, I think from a broader perspective, a lot of the stuff that I'm very specifically working on is sort of this theme of energy transitions, right? And very objectively, truly, Ohio is a really interesting state when it comes to that, because we have a very diverse sort of, suite of generation assets, and in Appalachia, especially along the Ohio River, in the southeast portion of the state where OU is located, we've had a lot of large coal-fired power plants, many of which have been closed over the past decade or so, and more that are scheduled to close and be decommissioned. And so, as you mentioned, it is a good thing from an environmental perspective, but from sort of a tax revenue, workforce, economic impact perspective, these are huge and very detrimental losses to these communities, especially many of these facilities that are located specifically in rural areas. And so, at the university, myself and colleagues, we've been studying this quite a bit. I've been doing a lot of stuff on also the, advanced energy, microgrids, solar, et cetera, deployment. But in terms of what has been shutting down, we kind of look at this from three specific angles. And again, I'm an economist, right? And so we're looking at workforce impacts, we're looking at fiscal impacts, and we're looking at economic impacts. And so from a workforce perspective, we've looked at the DP&L, the Dayton Power and Light, Stewart and Killen plants that close in Adams County, and sort of, southern Ohio. Like you said, we've looked at Conesville, and it's trying to understand, okay, who are the occupations, who are the folks that work at this facility directly, and what type of education do they have, what type of knowledge or skills do they have, and how can we use sort of coding and big data and trying to understand like workforce transitions. One of the really interesting findings that we've had is, hey, if you're a displaced worker from a coal-fired power plant, you can transition into job X, but you might be taking a pay cut, or you can transition into job Y, but you might have to be upskilled, right? You might have to get a certification or get an electrical engineering associate's degree or something at a local community college. So there's a wage gap, there's a wage issue there, as well as an upskilling issue in many cases. From a fiscal tax revenue impacts perspective, we've tried to, have a better understanding of what this means. We're talking, depending on the community and depending on the size of the plant, 15, 20, upwards of 30 and 40% of a county's tax base, which is, again, devastating. And then from an economic impact perspective, the thing that I'd really like listeners to be mindful of is that we can say, okay, the Stewart and Killen plants had 370 folks directly working at them, or the Conesville plant had 170-ish, I believe, that worked at that facility. But you need to also understand this multiplier effect, right? This ripple effect. These facilities have vendors and suppliers and strategic partners that they work with. And all of these folks in sort of a regional economy are also spending their incomes on, restaurants, groceries, going to the movie theater, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you take that sort of as a whole, when you aggregate all of those job losses in that comprehensive kind of framework, these can be really detrimental. The multiplier effect that we've been seeing is roughly 3 for these like coal-fired power plants in Ohio, which basically means in the case of the DP&L closures, 370 people actually meant 1,100 people that, job losses that we were seeing. And in Conesville, 150, 170 people, we're actually talking about 500 people. So when you add those all together, again, they're really huge losses. So we've been trying to be at the forefront of what's happening, how can we use data and analysis and sort of, again, this academic framework to figure out like boots on the ground. What can practitioners do? What can local economic development districts or county commissioners or other types of entities do to overcome these challenges?
From working in the utility industry, I know that a lot of those people are union members, IBEW or other, how have the unions participated in this transition, or have they made any, do they have some training programs available, or have they helped relocate folks?
It's a good question, and one that, frankly, if folks have feedback or, I'm interested in what's going on in certain parts of the state. I think it seems like to me it's highly circumstantial, depending on what utility or what county you might be in. I know down in Adams County, the county commissioners and the local economic development office was like very, very heavily involved. They were having resume workshops and workforce training, kind of, what can we be doing? Let's take a look at emerging occupations in the region. Can you transition to this kind of stuff? I don't know how involved the utilities have been. Again, I think that's a circumstantial thing based on what utility, but it seems like the folks that I've been seeing that are really involved are the local economic development districts. So your Omega, Buckeye Hills, OVRDC, APEG, those kinds of folks, and sort of at the county or city level, those types of practitioners.
And one of the things, we always hear, and it's true, is that there are certainly jobs to be had in the renewable energy industry. We've lost some as a result of the pandemic, but those are coming back as companies ramp up again. The problem that I've heard is that a lot of these folks don't want to move, even more than most people. If you're in rural Southeast Ohio, that has probably been your family's home for many generations, and the idea of moving to Canton, it doesn't appeal to you. So we really need to develop opportunities locally, as opposed to saying, well, sure, let's get you certified as a solar installer, and then let's send you somewhere else in the state. And I think that is more so the case for Appalachia, where people are really more attuned to their own area. Would you say, is that a generalization, or do you find that to be the case?
I find that to be the case for sure. I've interacted with a lot of these folks and talked to the local economic developers and those types of folks, and they've even surveyed, these unions and like, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in the region? And a lot of folks are saying, I have a mortgage, I have children in school. Like, it's not easy for me to pick up my family and move to Columbus or somewhere else where I can get a job a little easier perhaps, but there's other sort of social, aspects to those transitions. And so it's been interesting. As it relates to the renewables part, Jane, I will say we've been seeing a lot of big utility scale solar farm proposals in Southern Ohio very pointedly. And that's really what I've been studying a lot in the past year or two as well. And trying to quantify, like, can these displaced coal, impacted communities and these coal-fired power plant workers work on solar farm construction or, operations and maintenance of these facilities.
Right.
And so we've done some like very, pointed like heat maps and trying to understand these transitions. And, but that's an incomplete story, right? We're just focusing on energy, but there might be rural healthcare or tourism or other types of like emerging industries or occupations that we should be looking at.
Absolutely. That's true. Thank you. I'm going to look at some of these questions. One for Melanie: how did Kent get solar to be considered on their campuses versus offsite renewable generation? I assume, buying from elsewhere. And how did the university come to accept the higher cost, or was the cost shown to be lower than the grid, and how are they financed? This is from Fred Michelle. He's on the GEO board, and you can tell from the question that he knows what he's talking about. Melanie.
Let me give you one general piece of background information, and then I think I'm going to turn it over to Bob in a minute. So Bob, you can get ready. But so not long after I started at Kent State, so I'm going to say maybe 8 years ago or so, we actually worked with a consultant and put together a renewable energy master plan, which evaluated all of our properties to see how viable it was to have solar or wind at any of those locations. And at the time, I think that's when they decided or found that our field house was actually a good candidate for solar for a number of reasons, which I might just let Bob go into because he has more detailed knowledge of this than I do. But the idea was to keep watching for the price of solar to go down or for incentives to arise to where we could incorporate more of these. And so, yeah, I think I just turn it over to Bob at this point.
Okay, Bob, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't think you're on screen, but we would love to hear more from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't have much time. I have another meeting backed up against this. However, I've been at the university for nearly 22 years and doing mechanical engineering and mostly energy conservation. And the solar project that Melanie mentioned at the field house was the first one. And that was back in 2012. It became operational in July of 2012. And the comment about the more expensive energy, that did take place on that project. That was back when the solar renewable energy credits were at a very high level for revenue, and that all kind of fell apart. So unfortunately, we were saddled with that. However, we just did purchase that system, so we are not paying the escalation cost anymore. And I think the recoup of the payback is like in 6 years. So that'll be a total of like 14 years for payback on a system that was pretty expensive to put in. The current projects, however, we did stipulate that we needed to actually save money over the utility connection cost, and that was a little easier on the regional campuses because we are directly off the utility grid instead of on campus. The majority is from the power plant, and we have an extremely attractive rate down in the mid 3 cent to 4 cent range all in. So that's pretty hard to beat that with a solar project. Versus the regionals were about 11 cents or so, maybe 12 cents sometimes. So we also built in a minimum savings amount over the duration of the 25-year power purchase agreement, and that is 1.5 cents. So it's doesn't sound like much, but it does add up to several millions, I believe it was, over the 25-year for a minimum savings. And the way we're going to get that is not monetarily, however, it'll be with free solar power in the amount, the aggregate amount that we need to be made whole of. So it's a little bit innovative, but we come to the end result of a financial plus for the Kent State University and the taxpayers of Ohio.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. That was very useful, and I appreciate your staying on, and I hope you're not late to your next commitment, but thank you so much. There's another question that I think is interesting because Green Energy Ohio is looking, we're doing some planning about programming on electric vehicles, and one of our participants cited the EPA program that is giving, I think it's the Volkswagen settlement, actually, the money comes from that, 3.5 million to expand charging capacity. What about the use of EVs on either or both of your campuses? And how is it promoted? How prominent is it? Do you see it increasing? Why don't we start with Melanie?
Sure. I mean, we do have several EV charging stations on campus, but they are older, so they are not networked. And so that's some work that we've been putting in to try and get network stations so that other people will know that we have solar charging or EV charging on campus and be able to plug into that. I have been looking at that grant because our intention is to add more EV charging. We're trying to understand really what our target number of EV charging stations should be. And so I'm hoping to utilize that grant and maybe in collaboration with the City of Kent again, because part of the stipulation of that grant, we can't put in charging stations with that grant that are specifically for our employees. It has to be open to the public. So we do have areas of campus, parking lots that are open to the public that might be a good fit for that. But also, again, like we've collaborated with the city on other transportation issues. And I think it would be a natural fit to try and coordinate where those stations would go to be of best use for the public and for campus.
Yeah, I agree. Gilbert, what about OU?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Frankly, I haven't been too involved on the EV side. I know that we do have charging stations on campus, but they're kind of few and far between. There's some charging stations at Baker Center, which is sort of our central, campus center type building, but not too much elsewhere on campus. I know that there was an EV cruisers club, I believe, that was facilitated by former Upgrade Ohio and Sarah, and I think maybe Luke and Sopek have been involved in some of these things as well. I know Little Fish, for instance, your
yes,
Jane has a
charging
station, which is great. So I think we've been starting to see them pop up just by sort of demand, but I still think we have a ways to go, at least as it relates to on campus. My facilities, my building is up on the ridges, and we don't have any charging stations up there yet.
Yeah, infrastructure is a huge issue with the expansion of electric vehicles. There's no question. And we are, as I said, Green Energy Ohio is looking at doing a tour around the state next spring. Hopefully by next spring we'll be able to do that and actually visit different charging stations, different types. Some of them, there is a company whose charging stations supposedly are all powered by renewable energy, which is an even better, a plus. And there's also a company now in Shaker Heights that does EV ride sharing. So like an apartment complex or a company, if they make vehicles available to their employees or their residents, they contract with this company, and they have they make EV vehicles, electric vehicles. That's a repetitive, but anyway, make those available. And I think that's a great concept, because if we move away from single, everybody using their own car all the time, ride sharing has become much more important, and to integrate EV into that, I think is important. So I'm trying to see, it's hard sometimes for me to check and make sure we've gotten questions. And we are at about 5 after 1. There was one comment about fossil fuel subsidies that could be redirected to clean energy subsidies. Obviously, I think we'd all love to see that happen. That's a political issue that carries with it a great deal of baggage. And I don't know if either of you want to comment on that or not. Maybe not.
I could take a quick stab, just real quick. I mean, I think as someone who studies policy and subsidies and sort of energy economics, if you will, like, I'd make the argument that pretty much every type of energy is subsidized in some type of way. We have the investment tax credit for solar, for instance. We have other types of subsidies for wind, as well as coal and gas, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot of it is a matter of collaborative planning and just straight up politics, sort of picking winners and losers, the influence, and I don't want to get too involved in Ohio politics as we currently sit, but the influence of utilities, the influence of money and lobbying and those types of things, where a lot of those types of activities are driving policy making and the selection of, are we going to implement a subsidy for this or that? Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it'd be better if we could redirect a lot of those funds or governmental policy or subsidies toward renewables and clean energy. But it's a highly contentious and highly politicized issue.
And actually, the energy that is most highly subsidized at the federal level is nuclear, because they underwrite the insurance on nuclear power plants. I mean, that's the biggest part. There are other, and there are people who will say that nuclear is important, as it does not contribute carbon to the atmosphere, but then it has all kinds of other issues like waste disposal. So there is no, there are just a lot of questions out there. And it's always harder to stop a subsidy. I mean, if the subsidy's been going on for 50 years, sort of even knowing about it and going in and strategically reallocating it, that's a challenge, but it's one that I agree we should start looking at. So trying to think if there are any other, just quickly, because it is 8 after. Melanie, Green Energy Ohio is planning to launch an academic affiliation program. We've thought about it for a couple of years and we haven't really done it, because of all the things you talked about, student organizations and curriculum and research and institutes. I know at Miami, the Institute for the Environment and Sustainability, and it seems like and at OU, it seems like such a natural connection. But there's always the question of a value proposition. So, and this is really for either of you, what do you think Green Energy Ohio can bring to student groups or to campus organizations or institutes or departments? How could that partnership be of benefit?
I think one of the important things when COVID hit, we had to figure out how to connect remotely with our students. And the program that we did remotely that had the biggest success was with the Career Exploration and Development Office on how to write a cover letter for sustainability careers. And we had over 200 students participate in that. And so I think what Green Energy Ohio can bring to students that would be of a lot of interest are those professional connections. So opportunities to network with people who are already working in these industries, informational interviews, career shadowing, connections to internships. I think the students care a lot about these issues. They're studying these issues. And when it comes to what I can do myself, changing my light bulbs and things like that, I think they've got a lot of that already. But what they want to know is, how do I take this with me into my career? And of course, everybody wants to know where they're going to get that first job. So the more that you can connect with them about those issues, I think the more interest you would have.
And I noticed when I was looking there's a chapter of the Future Environmental Consultants of America on the campus. I mean, I wish there had been a chapter of that when I was in school. That's great. But I appreciate that, because that is sort of along the lines that we've been thinking. And Gilbert, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, my brain goes to 2 key terms: diffusion and innovation, right? And this is what I study as like a policy scholar and as an economist, which is, what are we doing and how can we learn from each other? I think, when I'm studying state policy, we have like our more progressive leader states that are implementing really cool and innovative energy policies. And then we copy each other, right? Like, this is how policy making happens in the US. We say, hey, look at what California is doing. Hey, look at what Massachusetts is doing. And I don't know, and maybe there's already networks. This is a question I'd spin maybe back to Melanie, but are there networks of connecting the dots of sustainability offices across public universities in Ohio or other types of, faculty researchers such as myself? And it might be a good way to say, hey, look at this cool student project we did. We just deployed this, ground mounted PV array on campus. Look at what we're doing in terms of waste or recycling. How can we have these things diffuse and learn from each other even?
And I think that's, yeah, Melanie, go ahead. You start.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. That network does exist. I mean,
Okay.
at a nationwide level, it's ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. So our campuses are all members of that. We have an annual conference that we attend and are able to connect with people around the country. And then within the state of Ohio, our Ohio schools, not just public schools, but all of the schools, we try to meet up once a year and connect throughout the year on issues that arise. So that network does exist. And that is primarily, I'd say, even though it would be open to faculty and definitely students, a lot of it is the people who are in my position. So at Kent State, one of the things that we're working to do to connect better with more faculty, even though we have some of those connections for sure, is working with that institute on the environment that I was mentioning earlier, because they have big connections to the faculty. So we're trying to collaborate on that and share our information networks to not have to recreate the wheel when we want to reach out to a different group.
Because that's certainly, I mean, one of the things that I see Green Energy Ohio doing is making connections among people and organizations. And so I know that there are local communities in Northeast Ohio that have formed an organization to do just that. I mean, they meet online, and each time one of them will talk about a renewable program that they've undertaken, and they'll have their consultants and they'll kind of walk through it so other communities can learn from it. And that's so important, that we aren't just constantly reinventing the wheel, but we are building on what has already been accomplished. So that's great. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the private schools. I mean, obviously you both represent state schools, and we have a tremendous state higher education system, but there are also some 40, I think, private institutions, private colleges and universities in Ohio, as well as a robust community college system. So there is there's a lot of potential out there for this kind of activity. Well, we're at 1:13, and I would like to thank everyone for joining, and especially our two guests, Melanie and Gilbert, and all of you who sat in on the conversation today and asked questions and shared thoughts. And I really hope that we can keep these conversations going offline as well, and that you will all tune in, register for the next one, which is going to be energy providers. We're going to have Frank Wilson, who's a vice president at AEP Energy, and we're going to have, as I mentioned before, Luke Sulfridge from SOPEC. And so I hope you all have a great afternoon, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.